First of all, I would like to thank you all for accepting to participate in this focus group concerning narrative research. Now, this is totally voluntary, and you can exit or leave the group at any time. And feel free to express your opinion. You can agree or disagree, or agree to disagree, or agree to agree with each of these members. And so I will not say too much. I will pass on to Rhoda, who will moderate this focus discussion.
Thank you.
Great.
I forgot his name.
Jay.
Jay. I would also like to add that we should allow one person to talk at a time, so that we can get what is needed in this discussion. I'll begin by asking if we did listen to stories in our childhood. I'm sure we did. We?
Yes.
And how was it?
At that time, we believed in the fairy tale that we were told.
Okay.
We love to listen to the tales and legends.
I have to recall again the stories of my kid look home to tell them the same stories again.
That's it. And what do we understand by narrative research, narrative inquiry? What do we understand by that? As a research method, what do we understand by narrative research?
Try to investigate the phenomenon through the use of stories which are told by people.
Any other?
Life histories of people.
I guess the point is that we're going to very basic nature. I mean, storytelling is traditional, the longest event in mankind. So narrative research is basically going back to the roots. So we think we are getting to the roots of the issue through narrative. So there's no build-up, there's no artificiality. I mean, this is the way it's going to happen.
I agree with that because about the research part, if you go back in history, there have been many things which have been carried forward down the lane through the stories. Look at like your stories about your childhood. We sometimes think of them only as stories, but if you go deeper in them, there is a lot of meaning, there is a lot of information about culture and values in them as well. So it was a way of transferring these values to the story.
They are retelling stories, something like hidden awareness can surface.
That will be the lived experience that comes out of the story. By the end of several listening to different stories, a theme can be developed around which a storyline can come out, and the story can be told by the researcher, putting in his own judgment or adding of his own experience in that and making sense to all the different stories that have been told and giving it to people.
I would like us to also look at what are the techniques in narrative inquiry? What techniques we use in narrative research to gather data?
So we have interviews, in-depth interviews.
What else? What other ways do we?
Biographies,
Yeah.
biographies or autobiographies, can gather data from these as well.
Observation, pictures, analysis of pictures or photographs.
Letters, ties with individual people.
Biographies.
Okay.
Not relationship, you can have.
Okay.
But I guess the main defect of the system could be considered to be that it is very personal, it's not objective, it's quite subjective in that respect. So whose photograph you take depends on who took the photograph, if it's his son or any.
It all depends how the researcher wants to interpret
This
the
one.
available data.
So the point now is that should the researcher be objective? Should he discern between subjective data and...
You know, on this one, I will go to Dr. Suko's comment. He says that as soon as you're in quantitative, you are subjective. You should not be ashamed about it.
Yes.
Being subjective is not a sin. Obviously, that doesn't mean that you can do anything with your research. You have to ensure, you have to follow a rigorous approach in your setting of your questions, in your choice of your method. Right? If you choose narrative, you should first ask yourself whether is the appropriate method, whether you should go qualitative and so on.
I would add that definitely there is subjectivity from the researcher's part in the story building, because after listening to all the different stories, there will be input from the researcher to make a storyline, to narrate it in a chronological order. So that is where the researcher becomes part of the story. He has his own input.
Okay.
I think that some careful explorations, examinations of stories will give some good feedback or data.
Examination of stories, so give feedback.
A good, which data,
You mean analyzing
exploration and examination
or story?
of story.
It is said that narrative method is appropriate in aspects of evolutionary biological sciences. What other field do we think narrative research can be used or it's appropriate?
Anthropology, education,
Teaching methods.
In each field, because you're concerned on the life of people. So any place where someone has made a meaningful contribution, you could, like you were saying, stories about people. It could be stories about one person as well. So if he has made a meaningful contribution to a field, we can have this story. Like we were looking at Dr. Koth, the one who manipulated his data. So you can have him afterwards telling his story, and you can try to find out what happened over this issue of manipulation. Through the story, try to find out things.
Cultural diversity, the evolution of culture also. Through time you can see how the evolution has taken place, the stories, how they have changed over time.
For people, it doesn't need a long span of time. It can be a short period, a small episode of his life.
So you're saying in which field?
In any field, like in education, teaching and learning, can take place in only it won't take years and years. There are things which can take years and years to narrate or to the story.
I want to ask if we agree that narrative research and life go together. Do we agree with that statement that narrative research, narrative inquiry, and life goes together? Do we agree?
I agree because it's an investigation of our lived experiences. So, I agree.
Who disagrees? Okay, we all agree.
I find it hard to disagree.
Yeah.
We want to take risks, as Leslie said, disagree, but it's difficult.
Okay, then I would like to know, what do we think is the principal attraction of narrative inquiry as a method? What is that principal attraction of this method called narrative research?
Storytelling has always been attractive to whichever age group you take. To read stories, to learn about stories is always attractive.
Nothing else?
I guess some subjects can only be treated in narrative because there's not enough hard data that you can go by.
Okay. I would like
So
to.
it depends on the topic.
Okay, who else? How about you?
I should say that sometimes you have no other choice. You can only go through the history. You don't have records, so you can only go through the lived experience of the person. So that makes it interesting. Also, I believe it's personal. That is why it makes it interesting. When you're gathering data, for example, if you're just going to ask someone on certain aspects, like interviews, they will answer. They're making their brain work. But when you're going to alter their life history, it's you're reaching their heart, and naturally they're going to pour out, I believe, lots of interesting.
And only the interesting part that it's the good side of it. There is another side that story could be depicting a problem with society. Maybe people are having certain sufferings which they are inside from so long time. So that can come out, and from experience of one or many persons, a story can be built on the problems of society, or problems that is being faced by some people which maybe society is not looking at or has been neglected or something like that. In that sense, it's very interesting to emerge, to make problems of society emerge.
Okay. I also want to add that one of the principal attraction of the narrative inquiry is also that it gives us the avenue, the capacity to tell stories of personal or social experience in a meaningful and relevant way, unlike some other research methods. Do we agree? Because I think it gives you the avenue to tell your story in a creative way, in a meaningful way, in a relevant way. Yeah.
Then we can stop. We have to pause and we can see ourselves with different perspectives. I'm doing something, I don't know exactly the way which I do, is it good or not? So by retelling, we can stop. We stop, we reflect back, look into mirror, and come to know, we see different perspectives. Like, maybe I was wrong, I could learn it. So as a way of
Any other view?
Sometimes the narrative is the only choice to do research, because you're writing autobiography of somebody, you cannot do other way than going through the past records, how that person lived and so on.
Okay. Then I want to ask if we are saying narrative inquiry gives us the avenue to tell life experiences in creative way, being creative in this storytelling in a meaningful way or relevant way. Do we also think it is like a two-edged inquiry sword? Can we say it is? Do we agree that it could be, it is a two-edged inquiry sword? And why do we say so?
You know, stories, when you're looking at something through the eyes of someone. And, sometimes, especially if you think of biographies, you're writing a story after it happened. So obviously there is some filtering of what actually happened, which occurs. And sometimes you can then be, I won't say misled, but you can be dragged into an avenue, on a single avenue as compared to a richer area. So there is this I would say threat, but there is this data where it can be
It happens that,
taken.
to add that to what Ravi is saying, it happens that the researcher brings his own personal perspective into that, but it may not be necessarily what the participants
So, so we're trying to say it could be fake, I mean,
Fake.
falsehood
Yeah.
could come in, they could add,
I can add,
okay.
please. As you said, it is a creative way of writing. The researcher can be so creative that he or she can fake the story as well. This I think it can happen. By narrating and being creative can happen that it's not a true story, so that it can become spicy.
So are you questioning the validity itself of the method?
That's not
Not as a
validity,
method.
that the participant can mislead the researcher by giving false information.
And also, the researcher could mislead the reader.
Yeah.
By-
That's what, that will happen.
These are two aspects, the researcher
Challenge-
part
it's a
and the
challenge.
person. The person, I didn't think about faking. It is
No, for the
possible,
researcher,
but I was
I think.
thinking sometimes, we naturally tend to suppress some things and retain some others or exaggerate some things. So this might happen, and you think that this is the only thing which happens.
depending on what is dominant.
In your mind, in your personality.
That becomes the subjectivity of the researcher. This is where the subjectivity of the researcher comes in.
No, that was the participant I was saying. Then you are saying the issue of the researcher when he does the restoring. So then I suppose it is there that he can, his own experiences can affect when he does the restoring.
That's what his input, the researcher's input. So it becomes subjective.
So one point I'd like to add to what you said is that as a method, how objective and how neutral is it? I mean, I come back to your view that Suthen will put this off. But I think that's a danger. I would consider that as a danger of the validity of some of the research objectives and all this things that might come out of reality.
For being fake, it can happen for the researcher and the person who is narrating the story. For both, it can happen to be too creative.
This is where the question of who owns the story, who owns the story comes in. So whether the participant, the person who is telling the story, or the person who is rewriting, restoring at the end.
So the question last time.
This will be a continuing debate like Leslie said last time. This is not been solved, and I don't think there is an answer for that because still it is a big debate.
Then I would like to ask, what is the sample size for narrative research? What would be the sample size?
Ideally, they say that you should go with one person, then you have full in-depth. But otherwise, if you go, it's always the question, if you go on one person, you might be restricting yourself to only part of the phenomenon. But with one person, you have the in-depth data of your whole life. If you go on multiple persons, then usually you are sacrificing probably part of the depth. I don't think we're talking about sample size, we're talking about probably appropriate selection of participants. Sample size would be like quantity.
I agree also with that because you have to see who owns the data, who are the persons who have got such stories to tell. That's one thing. And I believe that if you go to one person, it becomes a biography. One person is a biography, whereas when you are looking at a phenomenon, it could be many persons having the same, have lived the same experience. So we have to first see whether we have many people or only one or two, that will depend who those who have lived the experience.
The issue of biography, is it when you're talking on one person or when you're taking his biography as the data collection method?
And it becomes a biography.
So you say that when you go on one person, it is a biography, or is it when you write his book, when you go and look for his book, that you're taking the biography? I thought that when you're looking at his book, then you're using biography as the data collection method. Whereas you could take one person and you a series of in-depth interviews with him.
About his life.
You're writing about the life of the one
Of one person.
It becomes
the
super.
biography.
Okay, I would also like to add, I stumbled on the material. It says that that narrative research, the smallest sample size would be 1 to 3, and this is appropriate when you are collecting in-depth narratives and using multiple forms of narrative data analysis. And then the larger sample size will be 20 to 25, and this is appropriate when you are analyzing shorter narrative or when only one method of narrative data analysis is required. I don't know what we think about that.
Depends
Yeah.
there is a problem, which of an investigator, this will decide
The size you should use or the number of
to choose 3 or 20 people.
participants to use for that research. I think
Depends
that's
on the problem, the research question, what are we going to find?
finding out, yeah. Okay, moving on. I'd like to know what we think is the philosophy underpinning narrative method. I know we've talked about this earlier. What do you think is the philosophy underpinning narrative research?
I think the philosophy is to come to the truth, the basic facts as it applies to people. That's why we go to the person. We're not using any other artifacts to get the knowledge.
You're meeting the person first hand?
Face to face and asking him naturally what comes out. I mean, this is my fundamental.
Who else has?
There's one thing is getting this, it's a longitudinal study, so you get the information over a long period of time, which I believe is interesting as well as compared to other methods.
Who else has?
You are digging in the past, and it's impossible to get all the information at one go. You have to go through for several in depth.
Okay. Moving on, we would like to know why should there be collaboration between the researcher and the participants? Why do you think there's need for collaboration for the research, between the researcher?
The trust first.
As here.
The person would his life history, experiences. If there is no trust between the participant and the researcher.
Plus there's two people telling stories. First one, the participant tells his story, and then the researcher has to restory. So I suppose at some point he has to validate his restoring or something like that. So that's why with the collaborative effort, both have to work together in the story.
I think that each one will come with a different perspective. And each participant will his own epistemology. And together we form a step epistemology. So we have to come up with a common point, so that we can get a balance.
Unless the researcher gets the trust of the participant will not be telling the story truly. He'll mislead the researcher otherwise. He'll be getting wrong information.
With collaboration? If
No.
you don't collaborate,
If you don't collaborate, if you doesn't get the participant doesn't get the trust of the researcher, and the researcher, you cannot rely on what the participant will be telling him unless he gets his trust, unless both of them collaborate.
and it helps to also tell that story in a sequential manner, because you have to keep meeting with this person, so you have to collaborate so that you tell this story in a sequential manner.
So I believe that it's not one of meeting. Like you need to meet the person several times. So and I believe that participant also won't give everything in one go.
Upon good.
One go. So maybe after reflection, maybe things will be coming time and again. So meeting will take place at different times, at different periods. So it's good to have they collaborate together. If not, the researcher alone will not be able to write, to give, to make a narrative research unless the participants collaborate and give full information based on the trust between the two.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Why do we need to retell the individual story in narrative inquiry? Why is there need for restoring? Why is there need to retell? Why do you think there's that need?
Like I said earlier, maybe to raise issues that people don't know, maybe some problems, maybe some wrong practice or something good which is happening, so people need to know about, and it's a mean of telling, it's a mean of raising, it's a research to research on something that is happening in our daily life. People we are here with so many experiences. It's a way of letting others know about experiences, about the happenings.
To create awareness about issues. If the researcher is doing that research, there's some issues, there's some problems that he's looking at, and that's why he has got to tell that story.
It leads to seeing these experiences with different perspective again. Like we're telling you, you can see it from various perspectives.
Plus the objective is not to just tell the story, because if you're just telling a story, you're writing a book.
Yeah.
Here you're trying to investigate a phenomenon through the story. So that is why at some point in time the researcher has to take one step back and look at the story and retell it, I suppose, probably with some filtering of some things.
Take a pause and rethink.
Well, and also sometimes if you're doing with 2-3 people, then you have to compare the different stories and see what's the common plot and so on in the stories, and then you tell the story.
Any other view?
I think for life histories, it's not about problems, it's about the person itself. If the person is an important person.
How do you mean?
For life histories of people, to narrate his life as if to keep the person alive.
Biography.
Yeah.
If I may just add one point, I mean, I don't like to use the word important. I think it's more in terms of what, if the person has brought some major contribution, changed society, changed,
His
one who
contribution
abolished
to-
slavery, or the one who abolished, brought in free education. They are not interested to know how important, but what is the importance of what he did. And that is, for me,
Okay. Any other view?
Like Lausanne example is the SSR. On whole one week until you have this viewing the whole history of SSR.
SSR was that?
First Prime Minister.
That's for example.
Birthday,
Okay.
18th of September. We were Gatti with the whole history,
Like history.
life history of.
Okay. I'd like to ask, lastly, I would like to ask, why should we as a researcher engage in narrative inquiry? Why would you want to engage? As a researcher, why would you want to engage in narrative inquiry? Who would you tell, like, why would you want to engage? Why do you think we should be engaged in narrative inquiry, narrative research?
Do you mean why we should choose narrative inquiry as a
Yes.
methodology?
Yeah.
We said there is no other choice. When you're looking for something, there's no other possibility. Often it's like that. That is the only approach which is applicable to give you information.
we are talking about factors that brought change in Mauritian society, for example. To an extent, it would have to be narrative because you're talking of people who brought about those changes. So, according to me, you need to look at their life stories. What is it that went through their minds to make them propose certain things?
So I think when we are dealing with children, you cannot explain totally what they want. So sit with them, let them read the story again and again, so that you can see from which angle what he wants to see. And by telling, retelling, and retelling, we can restore the thing, we can understand better. So I believe that the best place is where education of child education.
Okay.
We had someone here with us, he's not coming now. He was looking at Bhojpuri, how it evolved over time. He was looking at the stories, the songs, adverts of the child, the songs that are sung, the rituals. In that case, he's necessary to do narrative research. There's no other way out.
So it depends on what you're trying to research on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being part of the focus group discussion.
So
Hand over to-
I would like to thank you all for this discussion on narrative. You have put the topic narrative in the middle of the table and have discussed, have given your opinion about it. Thank you, Rhoda, for moderating this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're the best moderator we have till now.
But